The Mandalorian Season 2 is now streaming in its entirety on Disney+. The finale was just released over the past weekend. I really enjoyed the first season of this show. I thought it was a nice departure from the kind of stuff that we've been seeing from Star Wars over the past few years. It was really simple but very entertaining, and I thought it drew a lot on the samurai and Western influences that made Star Wars what it was, and that was great to see. And so, of course, I was really looking forward to see what they would do with this new season. And given that this year has been pretty bad, there wasn't a lot of great stuff to look forward to, it was really great to see this show come back. I'm sorry that it's taken me so long to get this review up. I actually wanted to make this video when the finale came out on that Friday, but I've been sick for the past several days and I just didn't really have the energy to put up a video like this. But luckily, I'm totally good now, and I can finally get you guys my thoughts on this season of the show. But before we get into it, I do want to let you know that I am going to be discussing this season in spoiler detail. There's a lot of things I want to talk about here, and I can't really say all the things that I want to say without getting into spoiler detail. So if you have not watched all the episodes of Mandalorian Season 2, I suggest you go do that if you don't want to have anything spoiled for you, because I am going to be getting in depth here. So right at episode 1, we pick up pretty much where we left off with Season 1, where Mando is now trying to get the child to a Jedi. And there's a lot of stuff that happens along the way, but that's pretty much the entire plot of this season. Mando is just trying to get little baby Yoda to his kind. Jon Favreau took up the role as the director for the first time in the series with this episode, and in this one, Timothy Olyphant plays a marshal on this little village in Tatooine that Mando runs into. And with the help of some Tusken Raiders, he and Mando have to team up in order to take out this giant sandworm creature that's terrorizing this town. I really enjoyed this one. I thought it was a great way to kick off the season. The action was directed really well, and the visual effects also I thought were phenomenal. It had a really simple plot, but the action was just so much fun to watch. And probably my favorite thing about this episode was that Jon Favreau made some really interesting choices with his direction. Most of the episode was filmed in the standard 16:9 with black bars, but once you get to the last action sequence, he actually decided to shoot this in IMAX. The image fills up the screen, and I thought it made it very immersive to watch, and that was probably the thing that stood out the most about this episode. I thought it was really fun. Episode 2 was directed by Peyton Reed, who in the past did both of the Ant-Man films. Mando encounters this frog lady that needs to be reunited with her husband and transport her eggs to another planet, because they're the last of their species. And Baby Yoda keeps eating this woman's eggs, which apparently there's some controversy surrounding that. I don't know, I didn't really think anything of it. I will say it felt like it was played for comedy, but it didn't really make me laugh. I was just like, oh, he's hungry, I guess. There definitely wasn't a lot going on in this episode, but I did enjoy it, mainly because aesthetically I thought it was really cool. I like how they got trapped in this ice cave and had to escape all these creatures that were coming at them. They kind of reminded me of the facehuggers from Alien, which I feel like that was what they were going for. This whole episode kind of felt like an homage to Alien. There was also a really fun chase sequence towards the beginning with Mando and these two X-Wings. So yeah, kind of a fillery episode, but you know, if Peyton Reed wanted to just play around with the one he got to direct and have some fun, I'm okay with that. The next one was directed by Bryce Dallas Howard, who I thought directed one of the weaker episodes of the first season. It was that one where they go to this village and they have to stop this ATST from attacking. It wasn't awful, but I just wasn't really interested in the story. But here, I think she did a considerably better job than she did on that last episode. And this one was actually really interesting because we got introduced to the live-action version of Bo-Katan, played by Katie Sackhoff. I'm a big fan of Clone Wars, so seeing this character represented in live action was really cool to me, and I thought Katie Sackhoff did a great job. She really fit that character well. And overall, the episode had some really fun action, and it was great to see the show expand with some of these new characters. Also, we got to see the Frog Lady reunite with her husband, and that was a nice moment. Yeah. Episode 4 was directed by none other than Carl Weathers, which was so great to see. The fact that with season 1 of this show, we had Apollo Creed joining the Star Wars universe, and now he's making it. I just think that's so damn cool. This was the episode when I really started getting into this season. It was just so much fun, even though the story was really bare bones, and basically it was just Mando and the gang having to take out this Imperial base to free Navarro of the Empire. But it didn't really bother me because it was just so entertaining. You get this great action sequence with these scout troopers on speeder bikes and TIE fighters, and Carl Weathers trying to shoot them down in this gunner ship. I just had a great time with this one, and I think it's mainly because it felt like classic Star Wars. It felt like something that was taken straight out of Empire Strikes Back. And from this point forward, I was all in on this season. Who would have thought that Carl Weathers would direct one of the best episodes of a live-action Star Wars series? That's just crazy. Episode 5 brought Dave Filoni back into the director's chair, and this is the one where we get introduced to the live-action version of Ahsoka Tano. I love Dave Filoni. I think he has a great creative vision for the Star Wars universe, and I love what he did on Clone Wars. However, the episodes he directed in Season 1 definitely weren't the best. He did the pilot, which was his very first time directing live action, which, when you take that into consideration, he did do a pretty good job with it. However, there were just some things about that episode that felt a little clunky, and that's to be expected when, it's your first time directing live action. The second one he did, however, was episode 5, and that one was just really bad. It was the one where they go back to Tatooine, and that one just had some really bad acting to me, and the story was just kind of awful. But clearly this man has learned a thing or two since those episodes, because Chapter 13, The Jedi, is without a doubt my favorite one of this season, and probably one of the best of the entire show. Filoni really stepped it up here and gave us an episode with some great cinematography and overall just visual imagery that really stuck out. He utilized the location in some really interesting ways, how they're on this forest planet, and you get a lot of great stuff in the forest when Ahsoka is training Baby Yoda, or as we learn in this episode, is now called Grogu. But the big action sequence of this episode I thought was just incredible. You had Ahsoka having this duel with the Magistrate. This scene was shot beautifully. I loved seeing all the wides. It really felt like a big samurai epic duel. And then on the other end, we got Mando having kind of this Mexican standoff with Michael Biehn. Good old Kyle Reese. I love how this show takes people from all these other geek fandom things and lets them play around in the Star Wars universe. First we had Apollo Creed, now we have Kyle Reese. Favreau and Filoni really know what they're doing there, and they're doing a good job with it. But I love this episode because it really encapsulates what I love about this show, how it really draws on those samurai and Western influences that originally influenced Star Wars. It was kind of like there was a gate in this village that separated these two different action sequences, and on one side we had an homage to Akira Kurosawa and samurai films, and then on the other side we had an homage to Sergio Leone and Western movies. So just seeing both of those things represented in the way that they were was just so cool. And I thought Rosario Dawson was a perfect fit for Ahsoka. It's really hard when you take a character that we've only ever seen in animation form and try to bring them into live action in a way that works, or that makes it feel like we're seeing the same character. And I thought she was great. For me, being a big fan of that character, I felt like I was watching the same person that I saw in the Clone Wars series, and she really pulled it off. And then, of course, at the end of the episode, she references that she's looking for Grand Admiral Thrawn, which I'm guessing will be explored in the Ahsoka series that we now know is coming to Disney+. Really excited to see what they do with that. Moving on to episode 6, which was directed by Robert Rodriguez. In this one, Mando takes Grogu to this big Jedi rock thing to let him hopefully reach out and communicate with other Jedi. Obviously, the biggest thing that happened in this one was the return of Boba Fett. As soon as I saw the Slave One fly in, I was just like, oh shit, here we go. He wants his armor back from Mando, and eventually he takes it and just starts kicking ass all over the place, taking people out left and right, shooting stormtroopers, impaling them, stabbing them, hitting them in the head to the point where the armor on their helmet just cracks open. There's something I love about the image of seeing someone hit a stormtrooper's helmet and then seeing the armor just crack. I just think it's so raw, and it was really awesome to see this character get redeemed, because Boba Fett in the original trilogy, he looks cool and everybody loves him, but he never really got to do anything. He kind of was just thrown into the Sarlacc pit before he got to do anything interesting in the Star Wars universe. But gratefully, that character has been brought back in a really satisfying way. Towards the end of this episode, some Dark Troopers abduct Grogu, and then Boba Fett teams up with Mandalorian to go and save him. And then they start forming a crew, which then leads me to the next episode directed by Rick Famuyiwa. And in this one, we got the return of Bill Burr's character. Bill Burr in the first season just kind of annoyed me. I know a lot of people like his character, but I don't know, I never saw Mayweather. I just kept seeing Bill Burr. And in the episode that he was in, I felt like a lot of his lines felt scripted, and he just didn't feel real to me. But in this episode, he does show a little bit more emotion. He and Mando have to go to this Imperial base, and Mayweather has a conversation with this officer who used to be one of his superiors. And they talk about this massacre that happened to his people a while back, but this Imperial officer guy just doesn't give a shit about any of them. and that obviously really bothers Mayweather. Bill Burr does a lot of really solid acting in this scene just through his facial expressions, and I thought the dialogue did a really good job of building the tension. But besides this one scene, this kind of was my least favorite episode of the season. I just wasn't really interested in what was going on, and it just kind of felt like a connector episode. You know, when you're really invested in a season of a show and then towards the end there's that one episode that feels like it's just bridging the gap from the last episode to the finale. That's kind of what this episode felt like for me. But speaking of the finale, I do want to get into that episode now because, man, there is a lot to talk about with this one. It was once again directed by Peyton Reed, which I was kind of surprised to see his name at the end of the episode because I expected Filoni or Favreau to come back to do the last one in the season. Luckily, I thought Peyton Reed did a really impressive job with this episode. It was very action heavy, as is the entire season and the show as a whole. But in this one in particular, you get a lot of great sequences, especially when the Dark Troopers come in. They had a really great presence, and I actually thought they were kind of scary, particularly in the scene when Mando's trying to fight one of them, and he starts punching his helmet really hard. That was really intense, and I didn't know how he was going to get out of that for a minute. When I saw it for the first time, I literally just looked at my screen and I was like, no, Mando! Because you could genuinely feel how much pain he was in. And then there's a duel between Moff Gideon and Mando. This is when he breaks out the Beskar spear, and we get to see Moff Gideon wielding the Darksaber. Really well shot stuff. I thought that was a great fight. But that Darksaber actually comes into play later in the episode, because now that Mando has bested Gideon in combat, he's the rightful owner of that Darksaber. However, Bo-Katan really wants that Darksaber because whoever wields it is the rightful owner of Mandalore. So now Bo-Katan has to fight Mando and win in order to take back the Darksaber and hopefully take back the throne of Mandalore, which is left unresolved at the end of the episode. I'm assuming that they'll explore that in Season 3, but we'll have to see. And then a whole swarm of Dark Troopers come, and it looks like Mando and the gang aren't going to be able to take them out all on their own. Then someone in an X-Wing shows up. And at first I didn't know who this was. I guessed a lot of different people who it could have been. However, the way they were setting it up, I slowly realized who it was, and I was literally just sitting in my chair like, oh my god, that's Luke fucking Skywalker. And it was awesome. He just brutally takes these things out like they're nothing, almost like they're battle droids from the prequels. I thought the best part was when he takes his hand and he like crushes one right in front of him. That was so cool. I felt like I was watching that post-Return of the Jedi Luke in his prime. And a lot of people have made comparisons to the scene in Rogue One, and I think that's really cool. I love that these scenes kind of parallel each other because it shows you that this guy is unmistakably the son of Anakin Skywalker. And then he comes into the room and shows his face, and it looks like a really bad deep fake of Luke Skywalker. So that was a big letdown. I feel like there's a lot of different opinions on this. Some people I talked to didn't mind the CGI at all, and then others had a real problem with it. So here's how I look at it. If you're going to CGI an entire human face, it better be damn near perfect, because there's a real risk of taking the audience out of the experience when they see a CGI human that doesn't look convincing at all. So if it's not going to be perfect, you should have a real person play that character. And I get that Luke is not someone that people are comfortable with recasting. A lot of people only see him as Mark Hamill and no one else, and I totally understand that. However, Sebastian Stan is right there. That man looks exactly like Mark Hamill from back in the day. I would have preferred to see a real person, and I think if you just got Sebastian Stan, made him wear a wig, maybe digitally touched up his face a little bit to make him look more like Mark Hamill, that would have totally worked for me. But this fake digital Luke Skywalker totally took me out of the experience. Dr. Sleep is a movie that I think makes a great case for this, because in that film, they didn't digitally recreate Jack Nicholson or Shelley Duvall for the scenes that were flashbacks of The Shining. They actually had real actors come in and play those characters, and it totally worked for me. I felt like I was watching the same characters that I saw in that original movie. So I don't understand why we can't do it with bigger stuff like this. And then we have what is by far the most emotional moment in this entire series. Mando has to say goodbye to Grogu. At first you can tell Grogu is kind of hesitant about this, and he kind of asks Mando for permission in a way, and then he takes his helmet off to say goodbye to him, and he hands him over to Luke Skywalker. And this concludes the story of Din Djarin and Grogu. I thought this scene was really emotional and really well done, and it was a great way to conclude this season finale. And then there's actually a post-credit scene. Boba Fett and Fennec go back to Jabba's palace on Tatooine, and we see a gigantic Bib Fortuna and he just fucking kills him right there on the spot. And then he sits on the throne, which I guess means it's now Boba's palace, and we get the announcement that the Book of Boba Fett is a new Boba Fett series coming to Disney Plus next year. Some people thought that was going to be Mandalorian Season 3, but we now know that those are separate things. Could be really interesting. Disney just announced like a shit ton of new Star Wars shows and series and stuff, so I'm just going to take them as they come. It's hard for me to get excited about all of them right now. But I do really like how Boba Fett was redeemed in this season, and I think it'll be interesting to see him carry his own show. But I'm really more looking forward to Season 3 of The Mandalorian, how there's still that conflict that was left unresolved with Bo-Katan and Mando, and how they're going to be fighting for the throne of Mandalore, maybe, which I think could be really interesting, because we've never seen Mandalore in live action before. It's only ever been in the Clone Wars show. That has me really excited, and I can't wait to see how the next season expands that lore. Overall, I thought Mandalorian Season 2 was great. It pretty much gave me everything I wanted. I thought it was even better than the first season because there's not a single episode in this entire season that I didn't like. I found all of them at least enjoyable. It's very simple, it's not very plot driven, it doesn't have the deep thematic stuff that you get in some other Star Wars. But I think the show proves that you don't need that to tell a good Star Wars story. I think people come to Star Wars for different things. For people like me, it's the characters and the sense of adventure. For some people, it's the gritty underworld vibe. For others, it's the mythology and the lore and the story. And if that's what you come to Star Wars for, you might be a little bit unsatisfied because it doesn't really have that deep thematic story. But for me, I care about these characters just enough, and the main central plot of the show is emotionally investing enough that I was totally on board for this season. I thought it was very fun. I think Favreau and Filoni are doing a great job, and I can't wait to see where the show goes in the future. So I'm going to give Mandalorian Season 2 an 8 out of 10. I did like this one more than Season 1, even though I gave them both the same grade. I just think this one didn't have a single episode that I didn't like, and the first season had a couple of bad ones. But besides that, they're both very high quality seasons of a live action Star Wars series. And I had a great time with this one. So guys, have you seen Mandalorian Season 2? What did you think about it? Let me know down in the comments below. Stay tuned for more reviews over the coming weekend. I am going to be seeing Wonder Woman 1984 and Soul on Christmas Day. I really can't wait to talk about those. Also be sure to subscribe if you want to see more videos like this. And as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.